When I started my Harlowe ult, I decided to go all in on radiation damage with her. And let me tell you, this build is absolutely fantastic. It has shredded absolutely everything from level 30 all the way to UVH 4. I haven't gotten to UVH 5 yet, but I can confidently say it will have no problem in UVH 5. This Harlowe build does make use of the chroma accelerator skill, the red tree one, and you basically just go all in on increasing radiation damage. And one thing I can say after playing Harlowe for quite some time, she is absolutely disgusting. She is very strong and she can shred anything with minimal effort with the red skill tree. I reached level 50 with her with like level 38 weapons or something when I was leveling, and that was in UVH 2. That's how powerful she is. But there is one big problem. This build quite literally breaks the game. From my testing, the main culprit for this is the Demon Core capstone. Now I want to say quickly, I have no idea if someone else has already spoken about this issue. I imagine someone already has, but I just really hope that Gearbox fixes this. So what actually breaks? Well, with the Demon Core capstone equipped, when you throw out Chroma Accelerator, it will send out radiation darts at enemies and it will immediately irradiate enemies, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the skill itself. The problem is, for whatever reason, when the skill is equipped, radiation procs have infinite duration. They stack on top of each other and they just keep dealing damage over and over and over again. Now that sounds great, right? No. The problem is you get things like this. Your FPS starts to tank, everything starts glitching out, your cooldowns on your ordnance and skill just stop working, or they take really, really long. You can't reliably damage enemies, and visual effects just disappear or not work at all. It's very weird, but from my testing, the reason for this is when it's active, it stacks a ton of radiation damage over time procs over and over on top of each other, which consequently just breaks the game, and that has infinite duration, and I think the game just cannot handle what is going on. The only way to fix this is to kill the enemy that has all of those procs, or go back to the main menu, or restart the game entirely. It's been so bad before that I literally could not loot at all. Please, Gearbox, fix this issue because this build will be absolutely amazing if this capstone works. It doesn't need this capstone to function, it's just a nice bonus. Question is, can you still use this capstone even though it breaks the game? Yes and no. You can use it, just make sure that whatever you're killing dies incredibly fast. Luckily for us, this build can do that with most bosses or enemies with absolute ease. So my advice to you is test it for yourself, see if it works, use it at your own discretion until it gets patched and fixed. If it doesn't work for you, you're gonna have to forego this capstone for now and maybe use something else. Okay, broken stuff out of the way, let's get into the build and how it works. So how does this all work with Harlowe? How do we do so much damage? The core features of this build to work is as follows. We need neutron capture. This augment is a no-brainer for a red tree Harlowe build. This is the main thing that allows us to melt bosses at any level. All the damage that your energy pocket deals to enemies is stored. Whenever it explodes, a portion of that damage is transferred to Harlowe's gun, causing her to deal bonus radiation damage. The damage transfer will be 4% of action skill damage dealt. This buff will last 8 seconds. So in order for us to min-max this augment, we need to increase our skill damage to get the most damage transferred to our weapons. This paired with certain weapons allows us to melt bosses and any enemy that we just come across. We also go all in on radiation and elemental damage in our skill tree, and we make use of radiation based weapons to help with this better. It is not needed, but making use of Universal Generator, the legendary class mod, is also really nice to use with this setup. Demon Core is of course used to go further and increase our damage of our skill even more, thus increasing our bossing damage. And that is the core features of this setup and how it works. But for those of you who are watching this for the first time or have never played Harlowe and are interested, what does Chroma Accelerator do? What this does is fire an unstable energy pocket ball from Harlowe's Chroma Accelerator. This ball will fly out and pass through enemies, dealing cryo damage to all enemies. When you press F to manually detonate it or it hits a wall, it will explode, dealing radiation damage in a large area. Putting Demon Core on, the capstone that we really want to use, will now shoot out radiation darts at enemies, and whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy while her skill is active, it will automatically irradiate that enemy. Now, What is entanglement? You've heard me mention that. Harlowe's Vault Hunter trait is entanglement. Whenever Harlowe uses her action skill on enemies, they become entangled, and you can also entangle enemies with different skill points on the different trees. Entangled enemies share a portion of gun and skill damage with all other entangled enemies, sharing 7% of the damage for 12 seconds. This is also what makes Harlowe such an amazing group clearer, provided you have the right skill points. Okay, so how do we level Harlowe? The leveling setup and skill tree is really easy for Harlowe. I did start Harlowe as my ult, so she started at level 30. If you're starting the game for the first time and you're playing the campaign for the first time and you're still leveling, you can just follow this path right here. Field ready prototype, elementary, and then take neutron capture, enriched, down to glow up for more crit chance against your radiated enemies, chain reactor for dealing bonus radiation damage to entangled enemies, poisoned sun for extra radiation and irradiation chance, dirty bomb for causing enemies to create a radiation explosion when you irradiate an enemy. Then you can fully invest into test subjects for the remaining points, or just any other nodes that you want to do. It's pretty straightforward, it's not that hard, but when you do your leveling, just make sure to pick up any radiation-based weapon. You will fly through the leveling process with Harlowe. She is super easy to level. Like I said, if you're starting at level 30, you can just follow the exact same path, and then you can start leveling up, which then leads me into the end game skill tree and option. Okay, for our skill tree, this, by the way, is very flexible. This is the current setup that I'm running. I've tried multiple different versions, and I will mention it as I go through the skill tree with you now. At level 50, this is what I'm currently running, and this is what I can suggest you do too. We start off with field ready prototype because this increases our action skill damage, which of course in turn increases the amount of damage that gets transferred from neutron capture. I would then recommend going elementary because it's more elemental damage and more status effect damage, enriched for more radiation, glow up, pretty self-explanatory, poison sun, chain reactor, and dirty bomb. You don't actually need dirty bomb, it's just kind of nice, I guess, because it just creates an explosion. It's good for clearing groups of enemies, but otherwise you don't actually need dirty bomb. I personally went for fire rate on top here because to try, get more fire rate for my convergence, because it just felt a bit slow, but these are completely flexible on the side here. And then also test subjects, you can go either 2 or 5, it depends what you want. I would also recommend going increased status duration if you want to go all in on that status effect duration, but I did opt for practical applications again for 35% more skill damage, so we're getting quite a bit of damage increase from there. And then I did use mechanical brilliance. What this does is whenever Harlowe damages an enemy with a skill, she gains increased skill damage, which then of course in turn increases neutron capture. I did try rounding up, but this behaves really weirdly and I think it needs to be fixed. Another thing that you can do is go for this, which is parallel circuit, which is what I did. Whenever she triggers a skill, you gain 30% increased gun damage for 8 seconds. You can also go for flat action skill cooldown rate here as well, or you can go for extra critical chance with all skills if you'd like. Another one that is also an option is momentum. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she and her allies deal increased critical damage. Not a bad option, especially if you have managed to get runaway reaction, which Harlowe gains increased status effect chance. Whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, it becomes entangled, which is really amazing, I'll be honest. But if you don't have that, then don't worry too much about that. If you feel like you are dying a lot with her, you can use Elephant's Foot, or you can use Highly Efficient too if you want to kind of get more shield capacity and so on whenever you kill an enemy. It's up to you. You can change up the build and the skill points, but the main thing is just increasing your action skill damage and increasing your elemental and radiation damage. One other thing to talk about is if you really cannot make use of Demon Core, which I completely understand, another option is actually going for Shattering Light, which then you can use rounding up or something else like Highly Efficient. This will call for a different playstyle, which is going to be a bit longer and slower, but you actually get more damage from this and actually further increase neutron capture more. So it's a trade-off, but overall, try Demon Core and hopefully they fix it soon. Now we move on to our specialization tree. Now this is pretty important because there are 2 ways that you can go about, speccing out your specialization tree, especially for this Harlowe build right here. This is the main one that I'd recommend going for, and that is of course going for Daredevil and going for now with Caffeine and I Am a Gun and also a Honed Mind. The reason for this is because we get increased action skill damage, which will further increase our neutron core, and so on, which scales our damage even more. And also we get more action skill cooldown, and also we get a chance to critical hit and do critical damage, which means more damage. The other option that you can go for is going for brute and sharpshooter, going down to killer and actually moving down to overkill and so on. This is more for clearing groups of enemies. It does help and also increases your status effect application chance. And also you technically have compound inflictions, which helps with, increasing your damage against tougher targets. My suggestion is if you have enough iridium, try out both of them. I did find if you want to focus on your chroma accelerator more, this setup is the way to go. But if you want to focus on your gun damage more, then the middle path is the way to go, because you're going to really start increasing your critical hit and status effect damage with this with killer. So yeah, that is my suggestions for specializations. Let's talk about class mods. You can honestly use any class mod that you would like. The main one that I currently use is Universal Generator. This will decrease the amount of skill duration by 50%, but you gain 200% action skill power. The one that I managed to pick up is absolutely godly, because I managed to get the runaway reaction passive, which allows enemies to become entangled when we apply a status effect on them, and we pretty much do that instantly with the current setup. So every enemy that comes into my path will literally just be entangled instantaneously. You can also use Atomic Driver, which amps Chrome Accelerator, or Super Positioning by a Robot, which creates alternating cryo and radiation hazards around enemies when Harlowe entangles enemies. Otherwise, if you don't have these, just look for any class mod that gives you extra skill damage and any other stat that you're looking for, like elemental damage and so on. This entire setup, or Harlowe in general, is pretty flexible. You don't need specific things, you just need radiation and then neutron capture. Let's now talk about weapons, shall we? I mentioned earlier that we just need any weapon that has radiation on it. If you are leveling or you are already level 50, look for radiation based weapons and try them out. The current weapon that I am mainly using is the legendary Convergence shotgun, which is a very powerful option with Harlowe because of its asymptotic, I do not know how to say that trait. Get yourself a radiation element and you are chilling in this game. The reason the shotgun is so amazing is because when you shoot it, it sends out all of these projectiles and damages the enemy multiple times. So you just do a lot of damage instances, and paired with the setup that we're currently using, it just melts bosses. The next legendary I'd recommend is the Radiation Rainbow Vomit shotgun. This shotgun is amazing for a full damage over time setup or just applying as many status effects as you can. The color spray unique trait allows you to have 3 elements at once, and it's just great overall. Another weapon which I'm yet to farm the right element for is the Wombo Combo Assault Rifle with innate radiation, and I can tell you now this thing shreds enemies if you have one. I only have heat and cold so far, and even then it melts bosses and enemies. Otherwise, for the other 2 weapons in your loadout or just other weapons in general, just pick up any radiation weapon, try them out, see if it does a lot of damage, and if it does, go for it. Let's talk about our gear options. Your rep kit can be anything. If you are running around trying to move quicker, movement speed is always nice. Otherwise, for bossing, extra elemental damage or enrage is also quite nice. The Augment AF1000 is a good option, or the Triple Bypass legendary one is also very good if you're looking for some, legendary rep kits. For ordnance, I really think it comes down to personal preference. A radiation-based grenade is always nice and handy to use. However, I started using a superheater with radiation damage. This paired with your skill is absolutely comical. Just mini-gunning bosses down. It's super satisfying. I am in the process of trying to farm the Gamma Void Heavy Ordnance, which creates a singularity in which enemies take 40% increased radiation damage. I haven't had a chance to actually test it, so please, if you have one, give it a try and see if it works really well. I have a theory that it's going to be making this build a lot stronger if it works the way that I think it does. I've already spoken about class mods and so on, so we don't need to cover that. But when it comes to the shield, okay. So the shield, 1000% the fireworks shield, but specifically in radiation. This makes Harlowe a distinctly strong group clearer, especially with all of the radiation effects that you have through your skill tree and so on. Otherwise, you can just use any shields that you would like for bossing or group clearing. I personally just use the fireworks. It functions perfectly fine at UVH 4. When it comes to the weapon enhancement though, again, purely comes down to what your main weapon is and what the manufacturer is. Look for the stats you need. For example, I'm using the Convergence Ripper shotgun right now, and I'm looking for a high roller enhancement with gun damage, increasing fire rate, and so on. So again, this is dependent on you and what you're currently running. For firmware options, I really think the GU JFC for the action skill damage and cooldown rate is pretty good. You can go for 2 or a full set, or bullets to spare for fire rate, Oscar mic for reload speed, or just anything that you want. Honestly, again, it's super flexible, and that's pretty much the whole setup. I mean, for the pros and cons of this build, it's a really good setup that just does ridiculous damage, can scale really well with all types of content. It can be a bit squishy sometimes, so you can change up the build to cater for that, especially if you're bossing. You can get a better shield, you can get a better rep kit or so on. It is pretty much reliant on radiation weapons to do damage, unless you are using your action skill to proc neutron capture the whole time, which will then convert your damage to radiation, so don't forget that. And they just need to fix Demon Core, because it will make this build a bit better. It's already good, but Demon Core does add that extra radiation damage, which is just really nice, and then just allows you to do more damage and shred everything. Overall, I can really recommend, if you're playing Harlowe, if you're trying something different, or if you want a new Vault Hunter, please give Radiation Harlowe a go. It is super fun, and hopefully they fix Demon Core.